All right, so today we're going to deep dive into how to prepare for an interview for a special educational needs coordinator position. And luckily, we've got some awesome resources from RoleCatcher to help us out. We've got career guides, sample interview questions, and even get into how AI can give you an edge during your prep.
Yeah, it's really exciting stuff. We'll dive into how that AI works later. But first, I think it's important to make sure everyone is on the same page about what exactly a special educational needs coordinator does. A lot of people, they think it's just working directly with kids with disabilities, but it's so much more than that, right?
That's right. It really is. It's more like you're the architect, I guess, of a support system. Like you said, you're the one designing programs, making sure they're effective. You're keeping up with the latest research. You're also advising school leadership on what actually works.
Great. And it's constantly evolving, so you have to be adaptable. You're an advocate, you're a program manager, you're doing research, you're even kind of a data analyst.
Yeah, it's a good point. You're crunching numbers too, making sure things are running smoothly.
hmm
So for anyone who likes variety in their work and wants to make a real difference, this could be the perfect role for you. Okay, so let's get into the interview itself. RoleCatcher has a ton of example questions, but we wanted to zero in on the ones that really get to the heart of what makes a great Sen and Co. So let's say they start with the classic. Tell us about your experience working with children with special educational needs. I feel like a lot of people freeze up at that one.
Oh, absolutely. It seems basic, but it's your time to shine. Really show them what you're all about. Don't just give a list of job titles or schools you've worked at. Think about a specific student, someone who really challenged you, or a program you helped launch that made a real impact. Even a time you had to get creative to meet a child's needs, something that shows you go above and beyond.
So instead of saying, I worked with a student with dyslexia,
Yeah.
you might say, I had a student who was really struggling with reading. I implemented a multisensory approach, incorporated visual aids and hands-on activities. And because of that, his reading fluency significantly improved and his confidence just soared.
Exactly. Give them specifics, bring those experiences to life. Remember, the interviewer wants to see how you think, how you problem solve. They're looking for evidence that you're committed to student success and not just going through the motions.
Yeah, that's so important. And this is also where I think RoleCatcher's AI can be a really helpful tool. It can actually analyze your work history and then suggest specific experiences that might resonate with the hiring manager for that particular school or district.
Right. Every school has different priorities, so being able to tailor your answers to their specific context is huge.
It's like having a secret weapon in your back pocket, right? Okay, moving on. Another common question. How do you work with parents and guardians?
Hmm.
This one is all about collaboration and communication, or at least that's how I see it.
It absolutely is. You've got to remember that parents are essential partners in a child's education, especially when it comes to special needs. The interviewer wants to see that you understand how to build strong relationships with parents and that you can handle even those difficult conversations with grace.
Yeah, because sometimes those conversations can get a little tricky. So what would be a good example to share here? Like, should you talk about a time you had to deliver difficult news or maybe focus more on just routine communication and building that rapport?
Both are important, but I think for this question, it's best to choose an example that really highlights your collaboration skills. Maybe you worked with parents to develop a specific behavior plan for their child, or, maybe you facilitated a meeting between the parents, teachers, and therapists to make sure everybody was on the same page.
Oh, that's a good one. I like that example. But what if a parent disagrees with your approach, like flat out disagrees? Should you mention how you handle those situations?
Yeah, definitely. You can say something like, I always try to approach these disagreements with empathy and respect. I listen carefully to the parents' concerns and try to find some common ground. Ultimately, my goal is always to work collaboratively and to find the best possible solution for the child.
That's a great answer. It shows you're level-headed and you're not afraid of a little bit of conflict.
Mhm.
Now, this next question, this is about advocacy, which honestly I think is at the very core of this Senko role. The question is, talk about a time you had to advocate for a child with special educational needs.
Mhm.
What kind of story do you think would really impress them here?
This is where you show them you're a warrior for these kids. Think of a time you went above and beyond to secure resources, or maybe you had to challenge a decision that just wasn't in the child's best interest. Or maybe it was even just being that child's unwavering support when they needed it most.
So maybe you fought for a student to have access to a certain kind of therapy, or you advocated for a more inclusive classroom environment. It's about showing you're truly committed to making sure every child has the opportunity to thrive.
Exactly. Don't be afraid to share your passion. Show them you're willing to fight for what's right. That's the kind of Sensenko they're looking for, someone who's not afraid to stand up and be a voice for these kids.
Okay, this next question is about professional development, and it's how do you stay up to date in the field?
Mm.
I mean, special ed is constantly evolving, new research is always coming out, so how do you show them you're on top of your game?
I would mention specific journals you read, professional organizations you're a part of, maybe conferences you've attended, even online communities like forums or groups where you connect with other educators.
So instead of just saying, I read articles online, you might say, I subscribe to the Journal of Special Education, and I regularly attend the Council for Exceptional Children's annual conference. Being specific makes a big difference.
Huge difference. And if you can, mention a recent research finding or a new approach that's really got you excited. This shows them that you're not just keeping up, you're actively seeking out new information.
Yeah, you're ahead of the curve. And again, RoleCatcher can be super helpful here. I mean, their AI can actually scan research databases and suggest articles or resources based on the specific job you're applying for.
Oh, yeah, and it can even flag key trends in special education that you might want to mention in your answer. Like, it's a researcher, a librarian, and a career coach all rolled into one.
All right, let's move on to a question that I think a lot of people struggle with. How do you collaborate to include these kids in the general classroom?
Hmm.
It seems like such a balancing act, meeting the individual needs of these students, but also making sure they're a part of the larger school community.
Yeah, inclusion is a complex issue. You've got to show that you understand differentiated instruction, co-teaching methods, universal design for learning principles.
So instead of just saying inclusion is important, which, duh, right? You might actually describe a co-teaching model you've used successfully. Or you might talk about how you helped a general education teacher adapt their curriculum to meet the needs of a diverse group of learners.
Exactly. Be specific, give examples, paint a picture for them, let them see you in action.
Okay, so IEPs and 504 plans, those are a major part of the Centico role. Everyone knows that. So how should someone approach the question? Describe your experience with IEPs and 504 plans.
Don't just list the steps, you know. The interviewer wants to hear about your thought process, your philosophy on individualized education, your ability to create plans that really are tailored to each student.
So you might say, I believe in a strengths-based approach to IEP development, focusing on what students can do and building from there.
Right, and if you have a story about a time you had to get creative to meet a particularly challenging need, that's a great one to share.
Yeah, it shows you can think outside the box.
Exactly. And don't forget, RoleCatcher has your back here too. It can analyze sample IEPs and 504 plans and give you feedback to make sure you're following best practices.
Oh, wow. I didn't even know it could do that. That's incredible. Okay, we've covered a lot of ground already, but there's one more question I want to hit before we wrap up part one. This one focuses on adapting curriculum. The question is, talk about a time you modified curriculum to meet the needs of a child with special educational needs. Wow. So how can someone really nail this one, show them what they're capable of?
Well, it's all about showing them you can think critically, that you can adapt to meet the needs of individual students. Walk them through your process. How did you figure out that you needed to modify the curriculum in the first place? What changes did you make? And how did you assess whether those changes were actually effective?
So maybe you had a student who was struggling with writing, so you introduced graphic organizers or assistive technology to help them organize their thoughts. It's about showing you're flexible, that you can get creative.
Right. And remember, if you can, talk about how you involve the student in the process. Let them have a voice in their own learning.
That's so important, empowering these kids to advocate for themselves. Okay, I think we've covered a lot in this first part. We talked about what makes a great Sense & Co., went through some common interview questions, and even touched on how AI can help you prepare.
Yeah, it's a lot to take in, but I think the main takeaway is be prepared to showcase your passion, your expertise, and your commitment to creating a positive learning environment for all students.
Absolutely. And don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with part two after a quick break.
Looking forward to it. Welcome back, everybody. So last time we really dug into what it takes to be a great Sensco, like what hiring managers are really looking for. Now I think it's time to get down to brass tacks, get practical here. How can RoleCatcher, with its super cool AI, actually help you get ready for your interview?
You know, you keep mentioning AI, and I have to admit, I'm really curious. How does it actually work? Like, does it literally write your answers for you?
No, not quite that advanced yet. It's more like imagine you have this incredibly smart brainstorming partner right there with you. So you upload your resume, And RoleCatcher's AI goes to work. It analyzes your skills, your experience, and compares it all to the specific requirements of that Seneco job you're going for.
So it's not just looking for keywords, it actually gets what the job description is really asking for.
Right, exactly. It
Okay.
understands the nuance, the context, then it highlights what your strongest points are, the things you should really emphasize in your interview. And even better, it might suggest things from your past experience that you wouldn't have thought of right away as being relevant, but actually are.
Wow, okay, that's pretty amazing. It's like having a personalized coaching session, but with AI.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
So let's say you've used RoleCatcher, you've spruced up your resume, you've highlighted all the right stuff, and you land the interview. How does AI then help you prep for the actual conversation, the interview itself?
Okay, so this is where it gets even more interesting, even more impressive. RoleCatcher has this gigantic database, over 120,000 interview questions, covering all kinds of jobs and fields.
That's a lot of questions. But how does it know which ones are going to come up in your specific Sentency interview?
Right, good question. Well, remember, you gave it your resume and the job description, right? So the AI takes that information, it analyzes it, and then it actually predicts which questions are most likely to come up. And it's not just random, it takes into account the specific school, the responsibilities listed in the job description, even your own background.
So it's like a crystal ball, but for job interviews.
Yeah.
So it can tell you which questions to expect, but can it also help you, figure out how to answer them?
Yes, you got it. Now, it doesn't give you canned responses. That would be too easy, right?
Yeah.
But it gives you a framework, a structure for your answers, helps you hit all the key points the hiring manager wants to hear.
Oh, I see. That's really smart. So, for example, if they ask about your experience with IEPs, RoleCatcher wouldn't just say, talk about your process. It would give you specific pointers on how to highlight your collaborative approach, your focus on student strengths, things like that.
Exactly. It helps you connect the dots between your experiences and what that specific S&Quo role is all about.
That is so helpful. Okay, I'm really starting to get how powerful this AI can be. But, interview prep isn't just about what you say. It's also about how you present yourself, your confidence, your body language. Does RoleCatcher help with that at all?
You bet it does. One of the coolest things it has is this AI-powered video practice tool.
Video practice.
Yeah, so you record yourself answering some common interview questions. Then the AI analyzes your video, gives you feedback on everything from your body language to your tone of voice.
Wait, so it can tell if I'm like fidgeting too much or not making enough eye contact?
It can get pretty specific. Yeah, a little
Right.
scary, but also amazing, right?
Yeah, it's a little like Big Brother, but in a good way.
It's all about helping you present your best self. It can also pick up on things like filler words, like or like, or if you're talking too fast or too slow.
So it's like having a personal coach, but without the, awkwardness of having someone stare at you while you practice.
That's a good way to put it, yeah. It's a safe space to try things out, get comfortable, build up your confidence.
I feel like everyone could benefit from that, not just people going into education. But okay, speaking of the Seneco interview, let's get back to those tricky questions we talked about earlier. How can this AI actually help someone, answer those questions with confidence?
Okay, let's take that one about advocating for a child, right? The AI can help you pick the best story from your experience, the one that's really going to pack a punch. And then it guides you on how to structure your answer so that it highlights your strengths, your problem-solving skills, your commitment to the child's well-being. It might even suggest follow-up points to address any concerns the hiring manager might have.
So, like if you talked about a time you had to push back against a decision, the AI might suggest that you also mention how you handled the situation diplomatically. Work to find a solution everyone could agree on.
That's exactly it. It's not about complaining or pointing fingers. It's about showing that you can navigate difficult situations and always put the child's needs first.
I like that. It's like anticipating the tough questions and having a strategy in place.
Right, being prepared. Or let's say they ask you about staying up to date in the field. The AI can look at your resume, see what training you've had, what certifications you have, and then suggest other resources based on what's happening in special education right now.
So it's not just about what you already know, it's about showing them you're always learning, always growing.
Exactly. And it might even find some recent research articles or upcoming conferences that you could mention, which shows you're really proactive.
Okay, so we've talked about how RoleCatcher can help you prepare for specific questions. But what about those curveball questions? The ones interviewers throw at you that you just don't see coming. Can AI help you with that? Help you think on your feet?
Well, it's not about memorizing answers for every possible question, right? It's about Learning how to approach any question strategically, even the ones that catch you off guard. And that's what RoleCatcher's really good at. It helps you build up this mental toolbox of strategies that you can adapt to any situation.
So even if you haven't prepped for a specific question, you'll have the tools to break it down, relate it to your experience, and give a thoughtful answer.
Right. You'll be prepared no matter what they throw at you.
That's really valuable, that kind of confidence.
And that's the real magic of this AI. It's not about feeding you the right answers. It's about making you a stronger, more confident candidate.
Okay, I'm sold. This AI stuff is incredible. But let's zoom out a bit and talk about the bigger picture, like career paths for Senkos. We touched on this earlier, but RoleCatcher has a career guide that goes into this in more detail, right?
It does, yeah. It's important to remember that the interview is just the first step. Landing the job is great, but you also want to think about where you want to go from there.
Because a Senko role can be a stepping stone to so many other amazing opportunities. We talk about going into leadership. What does that look like in practice?
Well, as you get more experience, you might start taking on more responsibility at your school, mentoring new Senkos, maybe even leading a whole team. And some people, they move into district level roles where they're shaping policies and programs for multiple schools.
So you can really have a wider impact. That's awesome.
hmm
What about specializing in a particular area of special education? I imagine that's something a lot of people are interested in.
Yeah, definitely. Some Senkos, they become experts in things like autism, learning disabilities, behavioral challenges. They become the go-to person for that specific area. They might even lead workshops, present at conferences, or do research.
So if you have a passion for a certain area of special education, there are definitely ways to really focus on that and make a big contribution.
Absolutely. And don't underestimate the power of networking. Connecting with other people in the field can open up so many doors, whether it's collaborations, mentorship, even job
The
opportunities.
RoleCatcher, they have tools for that too, right?
Oh, yeah. Their platform has ways to connect with other educators, join groups with shared interests, even attend virtual events. It's a great way to build your network and stay in the loop about what's happening in the field.
It's like a one-stop shop for all things Senko. Okay, so we've talked about prepping for the interview, using AI to boost your confidence, even exploring different career paths. But there's one more thing I want to touch on before we move on to the final part of our deep dive today.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about, the strategy, the questions, even the AI tools that can help you get ready for this interview. But at the end of the day, what do you think really makes a candidate stand out, beyond all the technical stuff?
It's funny you should say that because I was just thinking the same thing. It really is about more than just, checking off boxes on a resume or giving perfectly rehearsed answers. It's about showing them who you are, your passion, that you genuinely believe in this work, and that you bring something unique to the table.
Yeah, it's about letting your personality shine through.
You're right.
But how do you do that without, feeling like you're bragging or overselling yourself?
Okay, remember that question we talked about earlier? The one you wish they would ask you. The one that lets you really talk about what's in your heart, your why for choosing this path. That's where your authenticity really comes alive.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So it's not about waiting for them to ask that perfect question. It's about finding ways to weave those elements, those personal touches, into your answers throughout the interview.
Exactly. Share a story about a time you saw inclusion really work, or maybe talk about a specific student who inspired you to become a Centeco. Let those moments come through naturally.
So it's about showing them that this isn't just a job for you, it's a calling.
Yeah, exactly. When you truly believe in what you're doing, it shows, and it's contagious. It really resonates with people.
So I guess what you're saying is as you're prepping, take some time to really reflect.
Hmm.
What are your core values as an educator? What drives you to work with these students?
Yeah, having that clear sense of purpose. It will not only make your answers stronger, but it will also show in how you carry yourself during the interview.
And that kind of confidence, that genuine enthusiasm, you can't fake that.
And honestly, that's often what makes the difference, Skills can be learned, but that passion, that spark, that's something special.
Okay, before we wrap up, I want to circle back to something you said earlier about how an interview is a two-way street. It's not just about them evaluating you, it's about you evaluating them as well. Why is that so important?
Because finding the right fit is crucial for both sides. You don't just want any job, you want a school where you can really thrive, where you can make a difference.
So don't be afraid to ask them questions, about the school culture, their commitment to inclusion, the kind of support they offer their Senkos.
Yeah, good questions. Show them you're serious, that you're not just looking for any Senko role, you're looking for the right one.
And it gives you valuable information,
Yeah.
whether this is a place where your values align with theirs.
Right. You might even ask how they support professional development for Senkos, what kind of resources they have, how they encourage collaboration between Senkos and the general ed teachers.
Those are all really good questions to ask.
It's all about making sure it's a good match for you and for them.
Well, I think we've covered just about everything. We've talked about what it takes to be a sensei, those tricky interview questions, and of course, how RoleCatcher can make your prep so much easier.
And we've talked about that passion, that dedication, that belief in these amazing students. And those are the things that will really make you stand out.
So walk into that interview knowing you have the power to make a difference. Your enthusiasm, your expertise, it will shine through, and you'll be well on your way to a rewarding and fulfilling career.
Good luck out there.
That's it for our deep dive today. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.